The outside world may put some pressure on you as a homeschool mom, but most of us don't even flinch at what others are saying because we create our own insane metrics, our own crazy to-do lists, our plans, and set such high expectations, often without even considering reality. Let's look at how you can do this year differently, approach it in a way that your homeschool year is actually doable and enjoyable so that you can look back and say, that was a really fantastic year because I put away that super homeschool mom myth and we actually just operated within the bounds of reality. Welcome to Little by Little Homeschool Podcast, where we talk anything and everything homeschool and all that encompasses the homeschool lifestyle. I'm your host, Leigh Nguyen. I'm a mom who never intended to homeschool, and suddenly I am here, 14 years later, with 2 homeschool graduates and 1 more to go. No matter where you are in your homeschool journey, Little by Little Homeschool seeks to empower and encourage you to carry out this amazing calling of home educating and discipling your children. It's not always easy, but I'm here to walk alongside you because I promise that these years are worth all of your effort. Grab that load of laundry that needs folded, settle in at the kitchen sink to wash those dishes, or tie up those walking sneakers, and let's get into today's topic. If I asked you what your list of expectations for yourself and this homeschool year is, what would be on that list? What if you paused this episode and you wrote it down, and then you just anonymously gave that list to somebody else? Maybe it's a friend, maybe it's a husband, maybe it's a stranger, and you ask them to read it. Would they look at that and say, whoever wrote this is crazy? They think they're going to get and accomplish all of these things done? Do they know that there's only 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and oh wait, yes, you're also working with children who have their own plans and their own ideas. Before we get into today's episode a little bit deeper, I wanted to give you a reminder about Little by Little Homeschool Conference. It is only 2 months away. If you have not gotten your ticket, you're going to want to do that really soon. You can get all the information, the details. Well, I'll tell you, it's Saturday, October 18th in Syracuse, New York. And all the details, more information, the lineup, our guest speakers. Joining me will be Whitney Newby and Zan Tyler. But you can get that at littlebylittlehomeschool.com/conference. The link will also be in the show notes. So make sure you grab your ticket soon. We'd love to be able to have you in attendance. Now, my own homeschool journey absolutely involves my desire to be a super homeschool mom. Inside, I'm a bit competitive, not necessarily when it comes to sports, because I'll be the first one to wave my white flag and say, we don't even need to play. You win. You could be the worst player at whatever the sport is, and you'll probably still win. But when it comes to accomplishing things and getting my to-do list done and feeling like we've done what we need to do, I will be super competitive. And I don't need to be competitive against you. I set up my own rules. Ask my husband. He's like, what rules are we operating in with now? You have so many ideas and everything, and you're probably the same way. Most of us homeschool moms, whether we are like that just naturally, intrinsically, a part of our personality, most of us then come to that point where we're like, yes, we don't need a lot of outside motivation. We have that motivation within us, but often that motivation can set us up to some very crazy expectations. So I was like, I'm going to do this right. I'm going to be the best homeschool mom ever. Call me super homeschool mom. We're going to play off a little bit. Apparently, I know that the new Superman movie was out earlier this summer. My husband really wanted to go. He was trying to find a time, wanted everybody to go with him. And it's really hard when kids are working and they have their own lives. And so he was like, can you come with me? I was like, okay, yes. So we carved out time, took a little time off of work. It was like the first day it was out in the theaters. We went. I was like, yep, I will do this for you, because if I never watch the Superman movie, I will be okay. Honestly, my favorite part about the whole Superman movie was the dog. Okay, sidetrack there. But the super homeschool mom myth is something that really I attached myself to. Okay, so let me tell me if this sounds a little bit like you. I was like, okay, I have to finish all the curriculum. We have to do all the field trips. We got to do all the activities. I got to lead a co-op. I have to host a Bible study and a book club and a boys club and all the things. And we're going to talk here in just a moment about what that ends up leading to. So I'm right there in the trenches with you, working through this. I have a few ideas I want to share with you for you to consider when you are managing your expectations. But let's first look at this. Your desire to do well by your kids and provide them with a quality education, teach them about God and infuse a love of Jesus and a desire to glorify Him in a biblical worldview and give them opportunities to serve and to create relationships with others and have a great family. I don't see anything wrong with that. It can just get to be too overwhelming. And that's the point. Let's take this little by little. That's why I call this little by little homeschool. You are going to have a good homeschool year. Last year, I hope, was a good homeschool year, and the next year is going to be a good homeschool year. Every year just builds upon one another. We don't have to do it all in one year, and it is impossible to do it all for your children, even in all the years that you are homeschooling them. The world is just too big and too broad, and there's always something wonderful to discover, and that's why we want to teach them and grow in them a desire for lifelong learning. They're never going to know it all. But if you can grow that into them, they will desire to continue learning. So here are my things to consider when you are trying to break this need to be a super mom, a super homeschool mom. Got to add the homeschool part. Is the first one is perfectionism. Now, when it comes to perfectionism, we have like this, I want it to be perfect. And it's usually, or always, we'll say always in air quotes, our goal. But should it be a perfect homeschool year? Should that be our goal? What is perfect anyway? Because what happens if we have this idea to have a perfect homeschool year? What happens when it's not achieved? Spoiler alert, you're never going to have a perfect homeschool year. You're going to have some good homeschool years. You're going to have some amazing and fantastic and wonderful homeschool years. You're going to have some homeschool years that are going to be a little bit stinky, that are going to be a little bit rough. Does that mean that homeschool year was less deserving? Was that year even less deserving of time or consideration? Or just because you didn't achieve everything, was that anything less? No, just because it didn't achieve perfectionism. But guess what? No homeschool year is going to achieve perfectionism. None of my homeschool years have achieved perfectionism. It's impossible to achieve perfectionism. We know that God is the only perfect being. Therefore, you as a super homeschool mom aren't going to achieve perfectionism. So what is the solution to thinking in our mind that we have to have this perfect year? We have this idyllic sense of what the homeschool year is going to be. The solution is to get into the Word, daily be reading the Bible and getting yourself, renewing your mind, as Romans 12:2 says, and focusing on the good things that God has for you and how He wants to grow your children and physically and mentally, emotionally and spiritually. And when we as a homeschool mom are grounded in God's Word, in a biblical worldview, we can set aside the perfectionism that you might be feeling on yourself, or you might be feeling from outside sources or blogs you read or social media. And we can say, no, what I am doing is good, and good is enough. The second idea I want to mention to you is that super homeschool moms, that thought, that desire, that drive that we have often leads to burnout. That burnout leads to usually two different end results. The first one is quitting homeschooling. And that is saying, I'm too burned out. I can't do this anymore. I'm going to put my kids into school, whether that is public school or private school or some other type of solution, which really wasn't what you intended to do. And sometimes as homeschool moms, we can rationalize that the beginning goal we have. So maybe your beginning goal is I want to homeschool and I want to be able to create our own education and pull in the resources. And eventually you just say, I can't do this anymore. I'm going to put them into school, or I'm going to put them just completely online. And that wasn't your original goal. Now, this next thing I'm going to say might hurt a little bit, but maybe that original goal is what you still need to do. You're just rationalizing and saying, well, I'm too burned out. Well, how about if we eliminate that result of getting burned out so that you don't have to go and do something that's more, and you don't have to rationalize this decision? And you don't have to explain yourself to me. You don't have to explain yourself to anybody else. But I think that deep down, you know that you're coming up with a solution, but you're not really getting to that root cause. And that root cause there is the burnout. And let's go back further. What has led to that burnout? So the burnout can lead to quitting, or at the very least, leads to apathy. And again, we can rationalize this apathy. Well, they don't really need to know how to do that. That's not a big deal. That's just a scam from the school for them to know how to do math. I don't know. That's a little bit extreme. But we can become very apathetic and just kind of a lot more laid back. And maybe that's not your natural desire. Now, we can be more laid back. We can homeschool in a more laid back way, and our kids are still learning and growing, and there's just a dynamic home atmosphere. Or there can be apathy where your kids are just sitting around watching TV all the time and you're just kind of doom scrolling and not much is getting done. The house is a wreck and meals aren't being made and you're just like, I just don't really care. One of those is okay. And the latter one is not okay. We have to realize that as moms that we don't have to be 100% or 0%. I naturally do that. I'm going to be 100% or 0%. And I'm really starting to realize that there's okay to be somewhere in between. Working out, I'm enjoying that. I'm enjoying getting healthy and all of the benefits to that. But I don't need to join some weightlifting competition. I was like, it's okay. You can be somewhere in the middle. And it doesn't mean that I'm just going to sit around and not do anything else and lose all the muscle that I have built. How about just somewhere there in between? We can do that with homeschool as well. So what is the solution to wanting to be recognizing that we're trying to be a super homeschool mom and it's leading to burnout? The solution is to allow time to enjoy your homeschool for you and your kids. When you're running so hard and you're running your kids so hard, they're going to possibly get burned out as well. So have some times where you guys are just enjoying the day. Maybe the first thing to try is to just do a 4-day school week and having a day off and see if that helps. Maybe it's doing homeschool a little more year round and see if that helps. Also work in some regular reviews for your homeschool and saying, okay, are we on track? Are we doing the things we want to do? Or do we need to adjust because we recognized that we want to get into a different area of study a little bit more because the kids are really showing interest in that? Or maybe current events that are going on, you're like, no, I really would like to teach my kids more about this or something. Maybe it's like the banking system that's been talked about more. And you're like, you know what, I'd really like to put aside, we're going to do a study of, I don't know, I can't even think of anything. But you decide, we're going to put that aside because I'm really feeling inspired and they're really interested in learning this. So that's a solution to that. The third thing I want to mention is to set realistic goals with a real timeline in mind. Always leave margin because guess what? Life isn't neat and tidy and neither are your kids. If you think that something is only going to take a certain amount of time, add a buffer to either side of that. You might say, well, we have co-op on Wednesday and starts at 9:30 and it takes 15 minutes. We need to leave at 9:15. Well, it starts at 9:30. You need to be out of there earlier. So you're like, okay, 9:10 or 9:05. You're like, okay, I'll have the kids start getting their shoes on at 9 o'clock. Well, when you start the school year, maybe in September, they might only have to put their shoes on and grab their bag and walk out the door. How about when it gets to be January? You might need to add a little more time because the kids might need to put on their snow boots. They might need to put on their hats and their mittens and their winter jackets. So allowing enough time, giving margin really helps us when we are setting some goals. So life isn't neat and tidy and your kids aren't either. So allowing some time. So some solutions to this is to plan your homeschool year overall. I've talked a little bit about that recently. There's always going to be shown in the show notes, always going to be other episodes that are going to be linked to this if you are like, oh, I want to kind of hit on this a little bit more. But overall, plan for the year, just have an overarching goals and ideas of what you want to do, and then just tackle it weekly. Take a look on a Sunday. This is what I did on a Sunday afternoon. Took a look at what is going on this week. Where do we need to add margin? What is realistic for this week? And the last idea I want you to consider as you go into this homeschool year is that slowing down is not failure. What if a less is more approach is better for your family this homeschool year? What if giving them a deeper education instead of a wider education is the solution? I know, I just busted your super homeschool mom thought right there. You're like, no, 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 we have to cover every single historical event. Well, what if kind of covered the whole broad a little bit? They know maybe the order of events, but you really did a deep dive into certain segments of history because you guys are interested in that. That's okay to do. So that is the solution, is to do deeper dives. And guess what? It's also okay not to cover every single, say in air quotes, subject every single year. When I look at my homeschool regulations, and other states are like this too. Now, some of you live in states where there are no regulations, but listen to this anyway. It will say in the elementary years, it'll say, I think compulsory age might be first grade. Most of them are like first, second grade. And then it'll say between this grade and this grade, subjects that need to be covered, and it'll have a list of subjects. Now, yes, we should be reading every single year. We should be doing math every single year. Do you have to do history every single year? It doesn't say that. Now, this is not legal advice, okay? So don't go ahead and take this and put it into court, saying, well, Leigh Nguyen from Little by Little Homeschool said this. This is my interpretation, okay? Is that it says that during those years, you have to cover these subjects. You could take 1 year and do a lot of history, or just do all history, and another year where you get into science. You might say, it's too much to do history and science, and I want to go deeper into a particular subject. Then you can do that. Maybe you are doing, your language arts and you're covering the basics, but some years you want to do more of a deeper dive. I know a lot of families love to do like Shakespeare, or they'll get into certain genres of literature and just go really deep in that year. So that is a solution when you're saying, I want to try to slow down. How do I slow down? Those are some ideas for you. Now, you're saying to yourself, we are starting this homeschool year. I'm feeling a little bit excited, a little bit anxious, and don't want to get caught up into all these things. And I want to set some realistic goals. I want to encourage you to go check out your homeschool blueprint, where we're going to set up some realistic goals. I'm going to talk to you about how to adjust those. And it's just going to give you that foundation. That foundation you're going to have for a great year. It's not going to be a perfect year. I will never promise a perfect year in the way that we think of perfectionism. But we can look back and say, you know what? That year was in God's hands. Therefore, it was the perfect year for our family. If you'd like to get started in your homeschool blueprint, you can go to littlebylittlehomeschool.com/blueprint so that you can set up your homeschool year. Now is a really great time, whether maybe you're already started a little bit or you're not starting for a couple of days, a couple of weeks, but I am so excited. Let's bust this your homeschool mom myth and let's just be real moms, okay? Can we do that together? Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. If it was just what you needed to hear, would you do me a favor and share it with a friend? And if you would like to connect more, social media links and more are in the show notes just for you. I promise to see you back here real soon.